Welcome to Inspired Learning, the Path of Exile podcast with Badger and Yoji. My name is Badger.
I'm Yoji.
And we're back, guys. Thanks for waiting a whole 2 weeks, like normal. We're back for
it's normal these days.
Well, most of the time, if Badger isn't, asleep or AFK or something like that. But I think we've got maybe a 90% track record. What would you say, Yoji?
I think we missed 2 episodes, I think.
Yeah. Maybe more than 90% then. 25, 2 out of 25, what's that?
Yeah, that's pretty okay,
more
I
than,
would say.
It's 92.5, something like that. Yeah, it's good, yeah.
It's
anyway,
probably pretty good.
Yeah, we're back. And we've got we decided that we're going to talk about some, kind of leveling or kind of like first start to a league kind of, tips and tricks or pitfalls or strats or that sort of thing today. As we're kind of, bridging the gap in the downtime of PoE, there's a lot to talk about to kind of, start prepping for new leagues and everything like that. But before we talk about that, Gauntlet. Well, Yoji, you're not playing the Gauntlet, are you? Let's get Gauntlet.
No, I'm not playing the Gauntlet. I'm still playing a tiny bit of PoE. I was trying out a Berserker slam setup because I kind of never did that. And that's what I've been doing mostly. I tried like some ground slam, some EQ, some... What was the other slam I tried? Ground slam, EQ, Earth Shatter, and like the fizz slams, because they're so much easier to start than elemental slams. I just wanted to like test out how the starting feels. Because Berserker has like 2 interesting nodes that I wanted to try for slams, which is one is the rage sacrifice. Like when you are above 25 rage, Warcry, you sacrifice rage and gain 50% more damage for exerted attacks for 4 seconds. And then if you're low on rage, you gain a lot of rage based on power, so you're like always like ping-ponging rage, dealing a crap ton of damage. And the second node is what's it called, pain tolerance or something like that.
Yeah, I haven't played around with that. How's that one feeling?
That's really cool. I think that's like one of the coolest nodes. It's like a defensive node on the Berserker now, a new one, where you gain whenever you get hit, you gain a stack of like a buff or debuff, whatever you want to call it. I guess it's a buff. It gives you 25% increased armor rating. So the buff stacks up, you gain a crap ton of armor, which is very, very noticeable, especially while clearing. And you also gain leech rate. I think it's like something freaking crazy, like 40% leech rate or something. Per stack, and it stacks up to 10. So you're later on sitting at like several hundreds of percent of like armor and leech. So you're leeching like crazy, or taking like almost no physical damage. But at 10 stacks, you take your life pool as physical reflected damage to the face, bam, and then you lose all stacks again once you're at 10. And there's like one way how you can cheese it, and there's one way how it's like in general not that bad. So first of all, it's physical damage, so you do have armor, I guess, so that probably reduces it. But what you can do is you can just get the stat that says reduced physical damage, reflected physical damage taken, and then you just take nothing.
Yeah, because it is reflected damage. It's the same as basically jumping into a fizz reflect map. Hey, it's that same kind of damage. So yeah, you can mitigate it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and you can get 100% with the Yugal Pantheon. There's like the 3-point cluster, and then I think you need like there's a jewel implicit now, and that's like Abyss Jewels, I think, as well, which say like 10% reduced reflect damage. I think you can get to 80% like basically for like 3 passive points and a Pantheon, and then you take 2 more jewel things. But even with 80%, it was pretty alright.
Yeah,
and you have to be aware though. There's things if you get increased damage taken modifiers on you, such as if you stand on shock ground, for example. That kind of messes with it and can sometimes catch you off guard and slap you in the face a bit. So I don't know how hardcore viable it is necessarily.
Aspect of Carnage as well from the Berserker. Would that do it as well? I'm not sure if you're running with that, but...
I'm running with that, and it might, actually. I don't even know. But it's most of the time, once you have like all the reflect reduction, you don't really notice taking the hit. Yeah. As much. The main thing you notice that when your leech rate is low suddenly. Like I don't have that much leech, or didn't have that much leech on the character. I respect it into like Cyclone to test some other stuff now. But yeah, it didn't feel as noticeable. It was just like a really nice leech and damage reduction stat. So it was kind of cool.
Nice.
It was surprisingly good. But yeah, I respect that to Cyclone because I wanted to test some Cyclone memes, and now I'm kind of like tapering off the character. I don't know if I'm really going to try something else this league anymore, or if I'm just saying like, okay, yeah, that's pretty much the league for me. But that was kind of like a cool experiment. It's like my 5th character this league, which is a lot for me. So it was kind of
Number
cool.
5, yeah. I think I've made. How many have I made? I've made a few characters, but that's because I've done like a bunch of private leagues as well.
Yeah.
Speaking of private, well, actually, not speaking of private leagues.
It's absolutely not a private league this time.
Strange segue there to the gauntlet. As Yoji sips from his EQ mug right there, you can purchase at wait, where can you purchase that?
On my merch store thing.
Merch store, which is at merch/merch. Right?
It's in the below description.
Yeah, in the description. If you're watching the YouTube, for those listening, you cannot see the mug, but it's great. Don't worry, it's really good.
It has a little earthquaking juggernaut on it, and it says EQ mug.
EQ mug, heck yeah. But Gauntlet. Okay, now we're actually going to get to it. I'm going to talk about the Gauntlet now because I'm playing the Gauntlet, and that started at 12 a.m. Last night for me. Well, I guess this morning. So midnight. So I played for like 4 or 5 hours. And it's brutal, as always, like Gauntlet. I died a couple of times in Act 1, and then I screwed my head on and then grinded to... I think on stream, I went to Act 6, and then I told stream, alright, I'm gonna go to bed now. And then I didn't go to bed, and then I grinded almost to Act 9. So I'm sitting just before Act 9 at the moment, which is nice, and I'm not dead yet. Because I will die, because it's Gauntlet. For those of you who don't know what Gauntlet is, it's a hardcore solo self-found race put on by Zizaran with many, many damage mods enabled. Things like increased move, cast, and attack speed. I think 30% on monsters. They gain 30% of physical damages, each of the elements. And a bunch of other stuff. I could go through it all, but... that's enough to say, yeah, okay,
it's most of the damage mods enabled that you can enable in a league. I think it's a bit bit lower, less resistances this time from what I've seen. I think that's just the second highest, not the highest, less resistances, which makes gearing a bit nicer and leveling as well.
It does. It really does,
And there's no multi-proj.
There's been a bit of a change this time around, because this is the fourth official Gauntlet, I think. And there's no multi-proj like there used to be. One of the modifiers was all monsters would just gain 2 additional projectiles. That's been switched out for a new modifier that GGG has added in specifically on Zizaran's request, which was very nice of them, to instead have 70% increased area of effect on everything. Which is kind of crazy in some aspects and not so crazy in others. The leveling process has been a little bit smoother.
Yeah, there's less of the cannibal shotgun and stuff happening, right?
Yeah.
I know that got me a few times when I was like trying some Gauntlet stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And Weaver went from like the most difficult thing in the leveling process to pretty easy, which is nice. Interesting because the big thing about Weaver with the multi-proj was when she would spit out her kind of webs, and they would just absolutely shotgun you. If you're at kind of like a medium range, the
resistance also probably helps quite a bit.
Yeah,
because normally at Weaver being capped is pretty difficult with the old mods, and since it's a first attack, like the EK thing is a first attack, you get like triple LE on top of that, and then shotgunning. It was basically impossible to take a full hit and survive. But now, apparently, it's not that crazy anymore. That's good.
Yeah, not that crazy, which is nice. Brutus is kind of the real tough one.
Oh yeah, with the AoE,
I would say. Yeah. if you're not doing a good job at kiting or don't have good range or something like that, Brutus is next to impossible if you're not like crazy over leveled. So it's just a lot of kiting. It's just like a couple of attacks, kite, put some totems down, decoy totems, perfect, go for it. But that has taken many a life in the Gauntlet, Brutus.
I think in general, the bossing is going to be a bit more difficult with like AoE, because there are some bosses where the AoE modifier will just make stuff pretty difficult to dodge.
Yeah.
And a lot of the general mapping AoE, general mapping projectile enemies will be a lot less crazy.
Oh yeah, definitely. Actually, it's a good. I'm actually just gonna don't mind me in the background here as we're talking. I'm just gonna see what kind of bosses have already been killed. I think it would definitely make sense that Aziri's been killed already, but Aziri was one of those ones that people are like, whew, Aziri's a lot of AoE and quite strong.
Yeah,
look
the
here.
storm calls with extra AoE, that sounds ridiculous. Same for the flame blast. I think Aziri with AoE is one of the more difficult ones. I think Uber Aziri might take down some people before that gets killed.
Oh yeah. Aziri's been killed a few times and everything like that. I'm Exile has killed Aziri. Garatha has killed Aziri. If you get others around,
yeah. I mean, if you know the fight well, if you get enough damage, I think it's pretty doable, probably still. But that early on, it's still a crazy feat, I think. But yeah, Uber Aziri is going to be on a different level.
Uber Aziri will be insane. Yeah, so that's gonna be super fun. If you want to catch some stuff of the gauntlet, at 3 p.m. GMT +1, so 1 hour part. Well, basically, is that 2 p.m. GMT or 4 p.m. GMT? I don't know what that. Anyway,
time zones are beyond me.
Time zones are weird. Anyway, 3 p.m. GMT +1 every day. You can catch some live casting on Zizaran's Twitch channel, so definitely go check that out. And I was watching a little bit after stream yesterday. It was super fun. Havoc and Big Seal.
Someone else.
Big Seal, who I haven't seen a ton of before, but does a really good job with
the casting was really good.
Casting, really awesome. So
I think they were a really good duo.
Oh, and I'm playing a Gladiator Bloodslinger, which I haven't transitioned into yet, but I'm just about to. So just
what are you currently leveling as?
Just Shattering Steel. Just
Shattering
pretty
Steel,
nice.
yeah.
It's probably better to level with slams, but I'm more comfortable with steel skills, so I went for that.
I think that actually is a really good tip for people in general. Like when people come to me and be like, yeah, what should I like? First time SSF, what should I play? First time Gauntlet, whatever. I think if you're playing something that you really know well and that you're comfortable with and that you know what to do with, that often trumps being like the meta thing if you never played the meta thing. If someone goes like, okay, I've never played Blade for Blade Blast, I don't know how to play it, let's go. Yeah, it's going to be a strong build. But if you don't know what you're doing and you really know, I don't know, like slams or Shattering Steel well, for example, like something else that is decently strong, but maybe not the best thing currently, then yeah, just go for that. That's going to, you knowing it's so much better is going to like bring it to the next level more than just playing something that maybe is theoretically slightly better.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Anyway, that's enough about the gauntlet, I guess. Because we're gonna get more into just talking about, starting. Well, it can I guess work with Gauntlet if anyone wants to give Gauntlet a go. Oh yeah, that's the other thing we didn't quickly mention. Gauntlet is no longer a private league. You can actually just log into your client and join the Gauntlet right now. There's a little button. Basically for the next 9 days, because it's a 10-day race. And go give it a go if you want to. It's very difficult, but it's lots of fun, in my opinion. But we're going to talk about leveling. Yoji.
Leveling and... Yes.
You've said here in these notes, that is you, actually. You've improved your leveling a little bit recently and learned some lessons. So instead of saying what lessons you've learnt, what mistakes have been corrected? What kind of mistakes did you used to be making through the leveling process, I guess, is a cool place to start. I'll talk about some stuff for me as well.
I guess the biggest mistake always was I just didn't really even try to level fast. I never really cared, and recently, because I was re-leveling, as I said, like 5-6 characters in this league, which is about 4 to 5 more than I normally do. Normally I play like 1 to 2 characters, and that's really it. But if you're like on your 3rd, 4th character of a league, you're like, okay, I kind of wish this leveling was kind of maybe going a bit faster. That would be nice, because I'm leveling and leveling and leveling, and that's when I actually, for the first time ever, tried to, get better at leveling and actually look at, hey, how do you get better at leveling? So just making an actual effort instead of just being like, oh, leveling is just annoying and slow. I think that's my biggest mistake. And I've been playing this game for like how many years? I don't even know, like 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, many years. And I never tried to get better at leveling. So that's probably my biggest mistake, because if you don't try to improve and like consciously like make an effort to get better, you're not going to get better that much, because yeah, you're going to get a bit better because you're doing it so often, but you will cap out pretty early, and just giving in that first initial, like, any effort at all will make you so much better at leveling, is what I noticed.
Oh yeah.
Because just by not fiddling with your gear all the time, because if your gear is good enough, for example, that's not something I learned. If you fiddle with it, that's just wasting time. Like, yeah, maybe it's cool to have that second wind on your arcane cloak a bit earlier, but is that really worth like 10 minutes of chroming and crafting and making gear work? No, just use arcane cloak as it is. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And stuff like that. I've done that so often. It's like, oh, I kind of want to link all my supportive skills as well early on. It's like, get the most important, like, your main skill setup, your secondary main setup, whatever that is. So, for example, if you're playing, I don't know, Cremation, Archmage, whatever, get your Archmage Cremation setup, get your DD setup, and like maybe your movement skill. If you can get that on second wind, that's probably pretty good. But that's really it. Like, all the other supportive skills, you have your auras up if you can. If you can't, then just run the ones you can. But don't fiddle like 10-20 minutes with your gear just to make all things work. And then like one act later, you're doing it all over again because you like need 25 res.
Yeah.
So especially in softcore, you can get away with like a lot of crap while leveling. So
Oh yeah,
I think
definitely.
that's something I
Yeah.
learned as well. And there's so
Yeah,
much stuff.
there is a lot of stuff, and it's a really good point. Like, especially, I would say it's even more important if you really, really dislike the leveling process to actually spend a bit of time on your leveling process. Because what that does is, you spend, let's say you just spend like a couple of days, a couple of hours each day or something like that, just tweaking some certain things. Like, oh, I noticed that this act, I'm not very good at this act. Let's, maybe go watch someone do a speed run of this act or something like that, and, get some tips or something like that. Or I always find that
Yeah.
I'm spending way too much time at the vendor, that sort of thing. Like, these are things that you can fix by just kind of like doing a little bit of practice, or even just like looking things up. And what that does is it means that every other time that you ever level a character, you're going to be faster, right? So you spend a little bit of time and save so much time in the future. And yeah, like you can go from 15 hours to finish the story down to 7.5 hours to finish the story, half of that, with relative ease compared to 7.5 to 3.5 or something like that. Obviously it gets a lot harder the quicker you go, but like if you're someone who takes quite a while to slog through the story and it is really rough, then the best place that you can start is kind of just like screwing your head on for a little bit, just being like, all right, okay, I'll just learn a couple of tricks, a couple of zones, something like that. We'll talk a little bit more of specifics, but like, it's the best place to start, of just going like, what do I struggle with the most? Do I struggle with spending so much time in town? Do I struggle with always getting lost in zones? Do I struggle with always being under leveled, not killing enough mobs? Do I struggle with killing too many mobs? There's lots of stuff that you can learn. And I am not I'm not a good leveler, but I'm learning.
I'm also not a good leveler,
better.
but I'm about twice as fast as I was before. So I
Yeah.
cut my time roughly in half, from like 15 to 20 hours for like 10 acts, which is, I would say, it's pretty slow for someone who played as much as I did. and I'm currently on this like 7 to 8-ish hour range without
Yeah.
really investing too much time. Like I just cut off like roughly half, maybe a bit more, of my time by investing maybe 3 to 4 hours of actually looking stuff up and trying to implement it during like 2 characters I would have leveled anyway. So it's not even, I'm like not even making characters to like for race practice or whatever that I'm not playing. I'm just practicing it as I level characters that I just wanted to level anyways. And while I'm doing it, I'm trying to like do a little bit of research beforehand, which gems to pick up, because that's something I always struggled with. But I was like, oh,
Yeah.
damn it, I have to go back to Act 1, like pick up this gem. Okay, and then I'll this Act 2 gem. And then instead I just try to pick them up as I go, and also know, okay, I need a transmute for this, I need a wisdom scroll for this, and I need a chance orb later for this gem. And have that basically prepared. And on my second monitor, I have like a tiny text file, like nothing fancy, just a
Yep.
.txt, and it just says which gems in each act. And that takes like, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes to prepare before you level a character. Kind of like how you make a loot filter, where before you make a character, you just make like the small txt, and that saves about probably like, I don't know, half an hour of fiddling around with gems or something.
it's something that it's a trap I always fall into. Is I'm like, okay, what build am I playing next? All right, cool. I pick this build. All right, what are the kind of gems that I need? I'll think in my head. Oh yeah, I'll pick these gems up. This is my main skill. These are a couple of things I'll pick up. Right, I can keep that in my head. Let's go. Get into it. Get to Act 1. Starting. I'm like, all right. Wait, what do I need again? And then I'll spend like, like 5 minutes there figuring out.
Yeah.
Oh, exaggeration. But like, actually that much time as I get later, I get to Act 3 and I'm like, oh wait, I should have picked this up in Act 2 and this up in Act 1 or, all this kind of stuff. So exactly right, Yoji. That little text file is vitally important. Even just having, your 3 links and your 4 links and then maybe your 5 links as well there. Obviously if you're leveling a character later into a league when you have a bit more gear, then you can prep stuff for maybe a tabula rasa or something like that. But text is really good, really, really helpful.
Talking about that tabula rasa, also if you know which gems to pick up, you also automatically know which colors you will need at which point, and you can highlight them on the filter, which is really good because if you like, I don't know, you're like an Act 3 or whatever, just did like the library quest and you want to like swap out some, that's usually when you do the biggest support gem swap, because that's when you get all the like good gems. So for like a slammer you get like a fortify and so on, you get your second winds, all the cool fancy a bit better support gems, and then the last one is then at 38. Just knowing which colors you need helps you like pick up the correct colored items earlier on to like already have them ready when you go do the support gem swap. So instead of like having to re-chrome or like keep looking out for items, you will have them in your inventory already and just like swap stuff out, alch it, and craft it beforehand. That really helps as well.
Yeah.
And something that Aptly said in chat that we don't have in the doc, I think a lot, like that's something that I've always been good at, knowing which quests to do and which to skip. Because at some point of doing it so often, you will know which quests are the good ones. There's a few, mostly the skill quests that you want to do, of course, because you want all the skill points.
All the skill points,
But there's some quests like I think one that everyone knows is Tidal Island, the medicine chest that gives you your first Quicksilver. I think that's something that hopefully everyone knows that who's been playing the game for a bit. But there's like a second thing that you can do where you do the Great White Beast, where it gives you a second flask, can be like a second utility flask that you need.
Yeah.
And there's some other weird ones where you might want a reward from, but there's mostly the skill quests.
Yeah, mostly skill quests. It's what I tend to just mostly jump to, is just those ones. I'm kind of inefficient in the way that I do it. It's not the best way to do it, and I wouldn't recommend it, but I zip through the story without doing like any of the skill quests that aren't directly on the path to the next act. And then I'll get to Act 10 and then I'll just jump back and do them all. Which in one sense is kind of like, I just kind of want to get through the acts, but then I get to Act 10 or I finish Act 10 and I'm like, all right, let's get to maps. Wait, I've still got to pick up 12 skill points. I probably should pick them up before I get to maps. So then I go back and it kind of puts it puts a little bit of a block in my leveling process there. I wouldn't recommend it, but skill points are kind of mandatory-ish.
Yeah. I mean, endgame, you obviously want as many skill points as possible because they can make a difference, right? But
yes,
while leveling, I think you can skip a few. What I try to do now, before I was just like doing whatever, what I try to do now is I try to do every skill point while leveling that is easier to get while you're in the zone than it is when you are redoing it. For example, the Mines 2 skill point is a good example of that. Usually while you're already in Mines 2, it's usually pretty easy to get to the Spirit of Deshrid or whatever it is and like click it and go zoom out, because you will pass, and the layouts are also pretty easily readable. Like to see where the quest is usually pretty easy to see.
Yeah, definitely.
There are not that many branching paths, and so the big branching path is usually always the Deshrid thing. Because that one is really hard to get otherwise, because there's no waypoint in that zone. So when you later get back to that one, you will either have to get through Mines 1 and Mines 2, or you have to come from the other side from the Crystal Veins and then go back like 2 zones. So those definitely do while you're in the zone. But there's stuff that you can do easily and quickly without when there's a waypoint close by. Especially if your build is currently struggling a bit with bossing, skipping some of the gods. I think can be pretty helpful, and then just come back over level and just like slap them. Yeah,
some of the gods that I skip in, I think Act 6 I skip the two gods that are out of the way, because they can be a little bit rippy sometimes. I'm usually running through with like 3 health or something like that. The
Abarath
and the Abarath, yeah.
Abarath is pretty difficult.
The other one. And they're just out of the way, so, you know, my brain's just like, alright, let's just get to the end and then come back. Which, again, it's not super efficient. I probably could do them. But yeah, well, in the gauntlet, you know, I am taking my time to kind of overlevel a bit now and do that kind of stuff as well.
I mean, in the gauntlet, there are a lot of people who are in like tier 7-ish maps or so before they ever do, or what's it called, the Valentia quest.
Yeah.
Especially when Valentia had multi-proj, a lot of people are doing that like once they're like well in maps. Some people never did that quest. Some people are like, I want to get to 90 to qualify for all prices.
Yeah, it was very rippy, and it's still pretty rippy. I saw Steel Mage try to do it he tried to do it in the leveling process when he was in Act 10. Went in there, chucked a couple of mines down, almost got one shot, and just left.
Nope.
I'm done. So yeah, that's just another testament to Gauntlet. But yeah, obviously, you know, if you feel you're struggling a little bit in the leveling process, it doesn't hurt to jump back a couple of zones and level a bit more. You know, 1 or 2 levels, or, you know, figure out if you're missing a skill point. Now, all of these skill points, they can be found. I'm sure people have leveling guides for them on YouTube, but you can also find all of this stuff through the wiki. It's fairly comprehensive. On each act, you can kind of click on all the quests. And you'll be able to see, for example, the more optional ones. As Yoji said, there are some like the den or the white beast in Act 2 to get a secondary Quicksilver or something like that if you want, or another utility flask. There's another utility flask one in Act 7, which I think is the first time you can get a diamond flask. So if you're a crit build, that one's pretty good to do at the very start of Act 7. And then there's a lot of Books of Regrets quests as well. That, you know, if you do need to tweak your do need to tweak your build a little bit, that can really help. But things like the fetid pool in Act 1, you really don't need to go do that unless you've really made a big mistake in Act 1 with your skill tree. But yeah, no, there's a lot of that kind of stuff.
Sometimes it can be worth to go back to these if you're like, let's say you're like respecing to CI or something, you're missing some regret orbs and you don't want to buy them. Then it can be good to do like two or three of these regret quests and get like 6 regrets for free. For those things, it can be good. But while leveling, I would basically never do them. Like fetid pool can take a while because you have to full clear the friggin' zone.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and then don't do that.
You miss that one pesky enemy.
Do you usually do the Lily Roth clear the Twilight Strand quest, or do you not do it?
Really depends whether I need gems or not there, or whether I just need to level a little bit in that zone, because sometimes you get to Act 6 and you're like, oh, my resistances are in the negative. Well, they shouldn't be in the negative, but if you're me, you'll get to Act 6 and you'll be like...
especially if it's fire res and you're on that beach with the fire dogs and the totem guys, that can be pretty tricky,
Yeah. So yeah, it depends. It depends on my run through whether I do it, because it can be frustrating trying to find all the enemies. The full clears are always a little bit frustrating, No,
that's true. Something that also improved my times a lot is using smoke mine. Just plain and simple. It's just ridiculously good for leveling because it gives you a movement speed buff of like starts out at like I think like 15-ish or something, and then later on it gives you like almost 30%. So it's like an extra pair of boots, and it is a movement skill. That's also really, really good to use. Plus, it blinds enemies, so it's also really good for bossing. It is just an insane skill, and I'm using it on basically every character that I can roughly at all get away with it. That just makes such a difference.
Smoke mine's great.
If you can use smoke mine, use smoke mine. What I do is I put mine detonation to instant, so I put the mine detonation on my left click, and then you throw the mine and shoop. That just moves forward, and you will... It's basically like having a second, like tiny Quicksilver on top of your Quicksilver. Yeah,
it's amazing. It's really good. Yeah.
Yep. So.
I should be using smoke mine in my gauntlet leveling, and I'm not. And so you've made me realize, okay, I didn't pick up smoke mine. That was a little bit silly of me.
Especially in gauntlet for the blind, it's just crazy good. Yeah. The blind. I mean, if you
actually, I got a very small tip about blind. You can link blind support to your Herald of Purity if you're playing with a build that has Herald of Purity, because blind support has no mana reservation, and then your Herald of Purity is blind enemies. So that's been fine. I've had blind, and I've also had blind from the Gladiator Ascendancy. Wait, that blinds, right? Yeah.
Yep,
Yes.
Gladiator
Yes,
has
it
blind
does.
as well. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you're a Gladiator, then it's not as critical.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of, like, if you're leveling as, like, an Elementalist or whatever, you have, like,
Oh, yeah.
no evasion and nothing, and then having just, like, this 50%, because blind is a 50% chance for enemies to miss attacks, which is
Crazy.
ridiculous.
Really, really good.
It doesn't
Yep.
work if you have unwavering stance, because you can't evade. Because missing
Yeah.
counts as evaded. But it's
Yep.
ridiculous. It's really good for Izaro. That's one of the main
huge,
uses of it. Because he hits, like, fairly slowly, and if he misses half of these slaps, that's just really good.
Yeah. Unless you're in the gauntlet, and if he hits one, he'll always crit. That's basically how you've got to treat the gauntlet. And if an enemy hits you, it will be a crit. It won't always be a crit, but you have to treat it like that.
Also in gauntlet, if it's a crit, you will be, like, ignited and shocked and chilled, which is ridiculous.
Oh yeah, that's why ailment immunity is so strong in the gauntlet. Yeah, and another big thing, and this is a little bit of a. It's not a thing that you have to do, I guess I would say, because everyone, wants to level the way that they want to level or with the skills that they want to level. But it's no secret that there are some skills that are way more powerful during a leveling process than other skills, more so than the end game, I would say. Things do balance out in the end game because you can supplement your damage with, maybe underused or underpowered skills through your gear. You can supplement the damage pretty well, but a lot of the time during the leveling process, that you don't have that kind of gear to really just pump up a skill to crazy heights, especially if you're starting out a character. So trying to level with something like, well, what would you try and level with, like just Ice Nova or something like that? It's a little bit rough. It's kind of like a big AoE skill. It might be good for clearing packs, but then you'll get to a boss and it'll be pretty rough. There are other skills that work, really, really well leveling. A really, really strong combination that a lot of people use on pretty much every elemental build that's leveling is Armageddon Brand for clear, and then Chromation for single target. That's
really good.
Still stupid for the leveling process. You can check that one out.
There's a lot of good stuff. There's also the Orb of Storms, Storm Blast Mine, which is still good. It's not as meta as it was before, but it's still really, really good. Because Storm Blast Mine throwing speed is super quick, and the Orb of Storms will zap every time you toss out the mine. And mines in general do good damage. I think Storm Blast Mine's aura has also increased damage taken.
Yeah.
So it's just a good combination. And there's some nice combinations. A Spellslinger is one of my favorites to level spellcasters.
Oh yeah.
Just have like 2 Spellslinger fallings and just zap through everything. Like I did Arc, Ball Lightning. I think I did that in Endless Delve as my leveling. That was really cool. Assassin, Arc, Ball Lightning, Slinger. But you can also do Chaos Slinging. Cold Dot Slinging is very, very popular. Flame Wall Spellslinger is really popular as well.
Yep.
And
there's a lot of good ones.
And the one that you will be playing. But that's not as much of a leveling setup, is it? I think that needs a bit of a...
You can switch into it pretty early, but it is a little bit rough. I like to switch into it when I get the Cruel Lab, because it's half of it is using Spellslinger with Exsanguinate, but then the other half... Well, actually, no. There's kind of, 3 parts to it. There's Spellslinging Exsanguinate, there's using Corrupting Fever, and then there's also using Kinetic Bolt, with your innate chance to bleed, to proc the bleed explosions, and keep your life tap up and everything like that as well. So you've kind of got 3-ish sources of damage for clear, 2 sources for bossing. But there's a lot of... So basically what we're trying to say, there's a lot of really cool combinations with Spellslinger that you can do during leveling, and it's very smooth, because it's just kind of one button play style. Press a button and all your spells get cast. It's pretty cool.
That's really nice. And also you can put like utility curse on hits and use frenzy and stuff like that, or power charges from your the one skill that you're using to trigger, or just have the coverage on there, which Kinetic Blast. A lot of people have been using that with the dot skills, with like either Corrupting Fever or with Flame Wall, just to get the coverage going.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot
for
of
bossing, I think I'll switch in Frenzy, but Kinetic Blast is just way nicer, because you just want to make sure that you apply as many Corrupting Fever stacks and bleed as you can to the packs, so they all just die really quickly. It's pretty
cool. Yeah. And also zone layouts. I think that's something a lot of people are scared of for leveling. that really helps. But because people are like, oh, I have to like learn all these zones and stuff. I think, I mean, yeah, if you want to be like a top tier racer, you should probably learn all the zones and all the craziness and XP of mobs. Like there's insane amount. You can basically take it as far as you want to, and I think a lot of people are intimidated by that. But you also have to realize you can also take it as not far as you want to. You can just stop at any time. You can be like, okay, this is as much as I want to invest into getting better at leveling, and just be like, yeah, I'm good here. So what I did, I just looked up 2 to 3 zones. I looked up. I played through with a character. I looked at the 3 zones that I find the most annoying, and tried to improve at those. And then when at some point you will have like once you know these zones well, you will have maybe 2 or 3 another annoying zones that are like now the runner-ups, and you just go with these. And for me, it was, I think, the Val Pyramid before the Val Oversoul.
Yep.
It's just a
That's
stupid
a rough
zone.
one. Yep.
That also is just not an easy zone. It has like some tricky layouts, and you can even see some races sometimes take the wrong turn.
Yeah.
Then it was the Val City, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
After the causeway, where you have to. That's actually an easy zone. That took me sometimes like 8-9 minutes to get through, and now it's like 2.
Yeah.
Because
same actually. I learned recently some ways to deal with the Val City. Look for the sea. Look for not the ocean sea, the C shape wall.
Yeah, it's like a C shape.
Then, yeah. But yeah, there's some nice visuals out there. Hey, for some difficult maps.
Yep, and that's in general like a lot of stuff that we take now for granted. Now, for example, when you go to Piety in Act 3, knowing which way to go by the cards, I think that's like all veteran player knows that. Yep. Or going by the dead blackguards in what's the marketplace, and also the second time you go to the marketplace, in I think Act 7, 8.
Act 8, yeah.
I think it's Act 8, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people don't know, because there are dead blackguards lying in front of every doorway that you have to go through to get to the next zone.
Yeah.
So you can skip every zone that is every doorway that does not have a blackguard. You can just skip and you will get through without having to backtrack. Yep. And there's lots of tiny things like that. Like not lots, but there's some tiny things like that you, if you know them, they will really help you.
I just a little anecdote with that zone in particular with the guards just in the gauntlet, because I was just leveling a little bit off stream, as I said, through Act 8, and I got stuck in this zone. I know all the tricks for this zone. I know all the guard dead body, follow the dead bodies, but there was a dead body completely hidden underneath a massive brush of like grass or something like that. Like I had to kind of like, move my character to the edge of the screen and zoom in a little bit to actually even see like a bit of his foot. It was like completely covered. I'd never seen that before. So that was funny. I was just searching everywhere. Like, I found all the doors. There's no guards. Oh wait, there's that grass there. Let's have a look.
He was hiding.
That was pretty funny. Yeah.
Oh man.
That was pretty good. Yeah.
So even if you know all the things, you can still be caught off guard and the game control you. But I think it really does cut off a few minutes per zone if you know like a few ins and outs of the zones, and I think that's already makes a huge difference in the end.
Yeah, and there's some general-ish things that if you're starting, like this is obviously a lot of zones might not fully focus on this, but it's a general type of thing, especially just in isometric games. If you're starting a zone and you enter the zone on kind of like, it looks like you enter in the bottom left, it looks like all of the stuff is going, all of the area that you can move towards is kind of like going diagonally upwards to the right, then that's the general direction that you should be going. You don't need to explore every nook and cranny and that sort of thing. And obviously, take that with exceptions, but that is a general rule for kind of starting to even figure out zones by yourself and everything like that. There's small little ways that you can kind of activate your brain a little bit more during leveling, rather than just trying to explore every crevice, trying to find every enemy or something like that, which is another thing we haven't fully talked about, is sometimes killing all of the enemies is a bad idea, and does, if you get too over-leveled, it's actually detrimental to progressing efficiently. There's a certain point where you can get over-leveled too much, and then the zones that you're doing, the enemies will no longer actually give you the correct amount of XP, because there'll be an XP penalty there if you're above
Yeah.
it. It's some interesting stuff there. So yeah.
I think you usually want to be like a tiny bit under the zone level for if you want to be like efficient, but
Yeah.
I think it's actually being over leveled is usually inefficient, but it's less of a difficult mistake to correct than being under leveled, because I've usually been over leveled, but I've tried to correct that, so I've overcorrected and I was super under leveled.
Yeah.
And suddenly you can't kill stuff anymore. So that's there's also an XP penalty, I think, if you're like too low or something, or just felt like there was because I was just killing so slowly.
Yeah,
so
no,
if you're
it's above and below. There's a penalty. So yeah.
Yeah. So I was like super struggling to keep up with levels, and that was even worse. So I think the best case, so if you're like 6 levels under the zone, then you have some issues.
Oh yeah.
It's quite bad. So try to because if you're over leveled, what you can do is you can just run through a few zones without barely killing anything, and then you should be good again. But if you're super under leveled, you actually have to go back and catch up again. So I think being on zone level or slightly below is a good starting point. Like really good races will usually be like a few levels under zone level, because that's like the sweet spot for XP and stuff. But I think if you're just trying to get a bit better, just try to not be over leveled. Just try to be on zone level or like a level lower, maybe 2. It's a good starting point, and then like find the sweet spot as you do that. Like just pay attention to how much XP you're getting. Try to not kill every white pack. Try to focus on like killing blue packs though, because they give a lot of XP. If you find a tough rare, just leave it be. If you have like a rare tanky rare with like armor, extra resistances and stuff that you could just regen's life and just would take you a minute to kill, just don't. Toss a smoke bind, be on the next screen.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I've got a little mind game, a little exercise. What I'm gonna do here, Yoji, is I'm gonna present you with a scenario. So I've been leveling. You know, I just got to Act 4. I've been leveling with let's say I've been leveling with Splitting Steel. I've been playing Splitting Steel. I got to Act 4. I'm noticing that my damage is really, really low. I'm not really killing things, and I'm thinking about re-rolling my build because I just can't. Like, I feel like I've stuffed my build up. What should I do at that point? What do you reckon?
If you're playing an attack build and your damage is crap, I think the first thing everyone should always do: look at your weapon. Chances are it's the one you picked up in Act 2, with maybe a tiny bit of flat physical damage, and that's really it. And maybe Splitting Steel is probably not the best leveling skill as well. So even if you want to be endgame Splitting Steel, leveling with something like Shattering Steel I think is a lot better for leveling, because it has more damage. It's the one that has point blank extra damage and gives you some block and stuff. I think that one is actually really good for leveling, while Splitting Steel needs some investment, and then it's just a clearing powerhouse later on, because Splitting Steel is the one where it just goes like crazy through the whole screen. So yeah, I think that's something. I think that's a very common scenario that I think a lot of people will find themselves in, where they're like, okay, I got to like, I don't know, Act 6, maybe Act 4. Like one of the difficulty bumps. I think Act 6 is one of the bigger difficulty bumps that you can hit, and Act 4 also is noticeably more difficult than Act 3. People will just be like, oh, just already not working out. Maybe I messed up my build. Just re-roll. And people will also do that when they get to like early maps and something is not really working.
Yeah, this kind of stuff does happen. You know, it happens to a lot of points in the leveling process, and it's happened to me a lot, you know, and well, there's a little thing that I'll talk about, you know, as an exception to that. Just quickly, basically, if you're really not enjoying the build, then you're not enjoying the build. But first of all, try and figure out why you're not enjoying it, and if you can solve it. So that's what we're trying to help with here, right?
Exactly.
But you're very right. Yeah, the weapons are always a big thing if you're playing an attack build. That's it's the main thing that I see when people are like, my damage is really low. I'm like, check your weapon, and they're like, yeah, that's why. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common, but I think there are like some more bumps in the road that you can hit, especially also in maps. I think usually getting to your first rat maps is when basically any non-super top tier meta build will feel that they're slowing down. It's unless you're playing like the toppest of tier builds, even if you play like it's like a B tier build, once you get the first like tier 11, 12, 13 maps, because mob HP increases like not quite exponentially, but it increases like more and more as you go up, and then I think like tier 14, 15, 16 actually increases like exponentially. It is pretty noticeable, and yeah, it's normal. It doesn't mean your build is bad. It just means you need to grind out some gear, either buy some upgrades if you're trading, or grind out some items if you're sole self-founding. It's normal. If you're not playing the toppest of tiers, if you're playing, let's say, I don't know, Crackling Lands Elementalist, so that's a build that can do all content, but it won't blast and breeze through all content, right? It's not a build that will, without any noticeable upgrades. Like, maybe if you're still on a 5 link in like tier 14 maps, that build might just not, unless you're going full glass cannon, might not have the damage. And if you're going full glass cannon, you might just die all the time. And it just takes some investment. I think that's also good. I think it's good that you can't just have no items and clear the game. There would be no point in items.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, it's a really interesting point there as well. And that kind of does tie us into, I guess, the last little set of topics we do have to talk about, or want to talk about. We don't have to. Well, maybe we do.
No, we have to. It's
no, we have to.
It's mandatory.
Yeah, it's in the notes, so we have to. No, yeah. Is this whole thing about, like, you know, giving up on a build because, you know, it might be struggling a lot, you might not be enjoying it. You know, are you giving up on a build when you haven't given it its full attention? And, you know, there are some small things you could solve with it. And these sorts of problems, they do happen during leveling, but they do more happen during these kind of break points in your progression. So it's usually around, as Yoji said, usually around that high yellow to low red tier maps, around your maybe third watchstone from a single conqueror, that's your third conqueror type of thing.
Yeah.
It's really where you get a little bit of a hit. You're like, oh man, my conversion trap build was doing so well up to this point that it wasn't. But I'm just using an example. It definitely won't be. No, but okay, let's take something else. My glacial hammer build was working so well up until this point, and now I'm just like, I can't kill bosses quickly at all. What's going on? Like you know, what's happening here? You know, and the same kind of problems do arise, especially with an attack build. Because I'm using glacial hammer as an example. You probably haven't upgraded your weapon since, you know, high white maps, probably. You know, that's what I, you know, always do. And you get into that swing of things because white maps to yellow maps, that whole period there is kind of the same. Like, there's not much difficulty increase, and then it's quite a jump. So yeah,
it's I think it's as I said, pretty normal to feel that bump and not to get disheartened by it. I think when you should definitely reroll, because that could also be tricky. I've at times been like, no, you're enjoying this build. I tried to convince myself that I'm enjoying the build because it was doing well, but I was just not enjoying the build. I was enjoying that the build was doing well, but I was not actually enjoying the playstyle. For example, at this league, I started out with a Blade Storm Corrupting Fever Gladiator. That build was doing really well. I was not enjoying the build, but it was not because it was killing absolutely that's an insanely strong build. It turned out to be one of the more meta racing mapping builds. So yeah, that build was perfectly fine. But I was not enjoying the playstyle because it was too similar to my last build, which was, funnily enough, Cremation. Because you leave a thing behind that deals damage and you kite around. It's just the same playstyle. So I had to reroll that. But so especially if your build is doing really well and you're still not sure if you're having fun, that is, I think, a good indicator that it's not because of a bump in the road, but because of maybe it is actually the playstyle. But yeah, if you're hitting a bit of a wall, then try to tweak the build, grind it out a bit, and yeah, see if you can actually upgrade your gear, because a lot of the time you will have just live res gear on every slot, no damage on like a belt, no damage on your rings, no curse maybe implemented yet. There are like so many multipliers you can still put in a build, and damage scaling in PoE, which could actually be one of the biggest problems of PoE as well, is very exponential, because each more multiplier you get will give you another multiplier to everything you already have. So if you get that 10% more here, the 20% more there, the extra curse, the extra increased damage taken on enemies, the extra flask, whatever, it will just ramp up your damage really, really well once you have a bit of damage to begin with. Gem levels as well is something people overlook. Like if you're like still that's like the weapon for casters, because if a caster comes to me like, oh, I just got to tier 10, tier 11 maps, I'm so struggling, it's so crazy, and I look at it and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
You have level 17 gems.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe
Gems. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
why. And
Yeah.
people will sometimes have that problem as well,
Yeah.
where they just overlook because your base damage is so important.
Yeah. There's another interesting. Everyone talks about more multipliers and everything like that in Path of Exile and how much better they are from just like standard percentage increased damage and everything like that. And in a general sense, yes, they have more effectiveness in the long run. A more multiplier is a more multiplier on your damage, right? But for example, Yoji did say before, if you just have life and resistances in all of your gear slots, and you don't have much damage, or you might not have much damage on the tree, but just like percentage increased damage, right?
Yeah.
Um, uh, Up until kind of your first 100%, if I'm correct, that is basically a more multiplier of all sources. So say for example we're dealing, physical damage, right? And we're a marauder, so there's a lot of life on the tree, and we've gone into a ton of life. We've got a lot of life on our gear and everything like that, but we haven't really taken many damage nodes on the tree at all. Like 2 or 3 points into a notable that's going to be giving you 40% increased physical damage with
Yeah.
two-handed weapons or something like that is so much damage compared to in the late game where getting 40% increased damage on a piece of gear where you've already got like 300, 400, 500% increased damage in lots of other places is not going to do much. But don't understate how powerful some increased damage early is. And also flat damage. It's the same kind of thing. Flat damage early is really, really strong as well. That's why you see people, it's kind of mandatory if you're racing with spells to get flat damage crafts on your wands.
Yes.
And same thing with your weapon if you're doing melee, that percentage physical damage craft on your weapon as well. Like these small little things that we kind of get told that aren't important in the end game, which they're not as important, but they're so important during the leveling process and those early mapping periods where you're like,
Yes,
where is my
they can be
damage,
really
right?
important.
Yeah.
Like having
So,
like 5 to 10 flat damage if your weapon has just 50 or whatever, it's like 10%.
yeah, it's
And
really, really strong.
some things like the more increased damage thing is, as you said, the more increased damage you already have, the worse getting some extra is, because it's only additive. And late game, let's say you could dual wielding one spellcaster, you will have like a 130-ish, 120-ish increased damage per wand. So getting that extra 10% compared to that 200% that you're already wielding just on your wands, then maybe you also have like, I don't know, an increased damage stat on your helmet from an helmet enchant. Maybe you got like a ring or two, like opal rings, and your passive tree already has a few hundred as well, maybe. Then getting an extra 10% increased damage will do nothing, while getting an extra 10% more damage will be insane.
Yeah.
And a way to like figure out where you are on that scale is like seeing how much damage some increased damage will give you. So for example, something I like to look at when I'm playing elemental spellcasters is Divine Judgment. It's the 50% increased elemental damage node, like on the left of the Templar. And if POB tells me getting that node is one of the best nodes on the tree for me, then I need more increased damage.
Yes,
that's basically how it is.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And it's the same for crit. For example, if a crit chance node gives you more damage than a crit multi node of a similar value, then you need more crit chance before you invest into crit multi, because crit multi should always be the best stat to get until like 500-ish plus %. So yeah, if crit multi doesn't seem to be the best stat for your crit build, then you don't have enough crit chance, and you're sitting maybe at like a 25% crit chance. Okay, yeah, then crit multi doesn't do much because only a fourth of your hits even get apply crit multi. And there are a lot of things like that you have to look into. Or if cast speed, if you're playing a self-cast build, gives you crap ton of damage, and maybe you're just casting too slow. That could also be a thing.
Yeah. And anecdotally, I've seen sometimes on PoE Ninja or some builds that people have sent me or something like that, and you notice these small little things like a Stormbrand assassin, and someone's asking me like, why is my damage so low? Like I've got all of these more multipliers and going low life. I've got all this kind of stuff, and I just look at the gear and the passive tree, and that's all that they've invested into are kind of those more multis and the crit multis, and it actually didn't have like enough crit or enough just percent increased damage, right? And getting like another 100% increased damage was going to give them like 40% 50% more damage overall, right? Because
Yep.
we do get told this. We get told that like crit multi is always the best thing. More multipliers are always the best thing. Double damage is always the best thing. And in most cases, if you're balancing your build, yeah, that is correct. But you gotta not take it too
far,
seriously, or like
Yep.
it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good point. I think that's also why Elementalist currently is actually pretty damn good, because you get so much free increased damage from the Fire Golem.
Oh, so good.
And a lot of people will dump stat increased damage basically, but the Fire Golem will take care of all of that for leveling. And yeah, I think a lot of people underestimate that a bit. How good that is.
That is an ascendancy that you can just forego increased damage anywhere else because your golems will just give you that much. Then you can just stack your fire dot multi or your well, actually not this league. Don't play fire dot multi this league because it's too expensive, guys.
It's just so expensive.
Something happened with a certain build, Burning Arrow.
Yeah, Burning Arrow, but also in general like Flame Wall. There's a lot of popular Ignite
popular
stuff.
Yeah.
And burn stuff. Yep.
Yeah. And that kind of is all these kind of things that you can kind of use to help you progress slowly into the end game and everything like that. But it does bring us to another little kind of controversial, well, not really controversial topic, but something that a lot of people have differing opinions on. I guess that is kind of the definition of controversial, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Watchstones and the Atlas progression, hey?
Yeah.
Over the years, this has become increasingly more complicated in certain aspects. Some complicated things have been taken out, but it's safe to say that, right now, jumping into the Atlas without really knowing what you're doing is overwhelming and difficult and just a rough time. What's your opinion on the current state of the Atlas right now, Yoji?
I think the current Watchstone system is not that good for like two main reasons. First of all, if someone comes to me and it's like, okay, how do I progress the Atlas? I'd have to explain for quite some time what to do, and it's most of the time easier to point them towards a guide that really explains the steps, because it's not a very easy, simple to understand process to even get started. So when someone's like, oh, I'm always stuck at the Atlas progression, I can't really blame them. Like, there's a lot of things in PoE when people are like, I'm getting stuck here and there. I'm like, yo, you just have to do this or that, and you kind of have to like stick it out or like invest some like time into it. And I think those answers are usually a lot more helpful than the Watchstone answers I can give, because it's usually ends up same with like someone's like, how do you do betrayal? All right, so let me start. So first of all,
all right, let's go.
It's the same with Watchstones, and my main issue with the Watchstone system is I feel like we didn't gain much from the added complexity and convolutedness in terms of customizability. I think we didn't gain enough out of it. Like, the system doesn't provide enough cool stuff for how much difficulty on. It's not even difficulty. It's really just complicated overcomplication that it adds. It's not. It doesn't even. It's not difficult to understand. Like, it's difficult to understand, but it's not difficult to do. Once you know what to do on the Atlas, it is just go through the motions. But knowing the motions is the only like gatekeeping mechanism that is there. And then of course, like, having a build that can actually do 3, 4, 5. I don't know, Awakening 8, what Conquerors. That is the difficult part, but that difficulty would be there no matter what the progression looks like, as long as the curve is similar, like the difficulty. But I think we don't really get that much back from the Watchstone system in terms of customizability, and there's a lot less just map, just progress, just see where the journey leads you, and a lot more you can hit roadblocks, you can mess stuff up in the sense that not permanently, but you can, if you don't understand what to do next, you just like will be like treading on the spot for a while.
Yeah. There's certain things that I do agree with a lot that you're saying there. There are certain things that are quite convoluted, and you kind of got to jump through some hoops to start to understand it, or kind of just like solve the puzzle, the initial puzzle, and then kind of you're good from that point. And you're very right that it doesn't give us back customization of, well, not really. Like the customization, we could argue that, but the customization does just come now from Atlas passives, right? You're changing and swapping watchstones in regions, not too much based on the maps that they're dropping. You are sometimes if you're target farming, and that is a certain type of customization. It is. But
it exists, and it's useful for like divination cards and stuff.
Yeah,
but it's I think that just having that tiny bit of, hey, I can do this for how much freaking stuff I have to explain to people now just so they can understand the basics. I think that the trade-off is not worth. There is customization, but we don't get that much customization, and we get so much complication.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like I was just thinking here as well. Like there's no simple answer now. There used to be a simple answer for, say, a question like, what tier is Lighthouse map, right? Well, I think it's exactly. What tier is Lighthouse map? Yoji, right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's,
you have to, like,
it's
put in
base tier
watchstones,
this,
see when
but
it pops up,
can be these other tiers and all this other stuff, or that map doesn't actually unlock until you get 3 watchstones in that region, or But before the watchstone, like I don't want to hark on and be like, we used to have it better, because a lot has been improved, a lot has, but the simplicity of going, well, this map is this tier, right? Is something that I think is really missing for people to just kind of initially understand the Atlas as they jump into it. Even putting in that first watchstone is a little bit confusing. You're like, all right, I've got this thing. Okay, there's a slot there. Let's put that in. Wait, that map that I'm holding, this map right now, this arcade map that's tier 1, but my Atlas is saying that it's tier 5. Do I put this in? Do I run this and now it's going to turn into a tier 5, or do I wait? Like, there's so many questions that come there. Yeah. Some of them can be solved in game. I think Kirak has quite a bit of stuff now that he does help with. You can go and talk to him. But there's also so many questions. Yeah.
There also is like a bit of a watchstone tutorial, and I think it is possible to figure it all out if you really want to. As I said, I don't really mind that the system is a bit more tricky and difficult to progress through. I just don't feel we're getting enough out of it, basically. Like what we get back, normally when you add complication, if you also add depth and customizability and the same degree or more, I usually feel it's worth it, and that's usually what PoE has been like PoE's thing. The game would be extremely complicated.
Well lots of times.
Yeah, they've usually hit that nail pretty well on the head. Like, for example, I think the passive tree, it looks crazy. Once you know your way around it, it's not even half that crazy. And there's a lot of customizability that we get out of having a passive tree, having different classes with ascendancies, having gems and so on, and like influence, double influence. That all adds layers of complications and like layers of stuff you have to know and understand. But always I feel there's enough to get out of it to justify that it is difficult to get into. But the Atlas in the current state, I think it would benefit from being a bit more easy, a bit more like linear to progress. And then maybe in the end game have some extra layers of customization, such as the Atlas passives, such as like having Watchstone region stuff. But I think most people, once they got an endgame will just run the fully Awakened 8 Atlas anyways, right? So
Yeah, a lot of the time you are doing that. And as I said, there are strategies of taking out certain watchstones to drop, certain maps in certain areas. And you can use that in conjunction if you just want to, run Lyra Arthane for heist or something like that. There is a little bit of strategy involved in that with the watchstones. Like, there is strategy that you can involve there. But I think you have hit the nail right on the head, Yoji, in terms of the amount of depth that we get out of the watchstone system is not equal to the amount of added confusion that it gives, especially to first time, second time, third time through the Atlas, while you're still trying to understand it. Every time you come to it, it's like what is going on again? Like, wait, what? What do I do? Okay, let's experiment. Let's just take these all out and put them in, and I don't know, man. I'll get another one somehow. I don't know. It'll happen, right? Yeah. But I think there are some good guides out there. I don't want to push my guide too much because I haven't checked up on it recently. I released it at the start, an updated guide at the start of 3.13, and nothing's changed for 3.14, but some better strategies have come to light in that time. There's some stuff to do with the ping pong strategy, I think it's called. No, not ping pong. The leapfrog, not ping pong. Leapfrog strategy. I was thinking of different words.
I mean, leapfrog has been done for a while, but I think people do something that's called like watchstone juggling. I think Carve coined that term.
Yeah.
Where you like take watchstones out and put them somewhere else before you run the map, but after putting it in. And I don't do that.
Yeah.
And I think just basic leapfrog is way good enough for people to progress the Atlas. And even I've even done a worse strategy to leapfrog until this league. And even that is completely fine to progress the Atlas.
Yeah. Yeah, even looking at, like, if you just Google, like, leapfrog strategy, PoE, it'd probably be a Grimro video that pops up. I think that's the real popular one, and it's a great one to check out. Grimro's a great content creator for this kind of stuff.
Valor has a good written guide that that is actually the one that I use to get leapfrogging into my mind.
Yeah. And even if you're not following it one for one, it does a good job of kind of showing you at least the mechanics of the Atlas. And my Atlas guide does go into depth of how the Atlas works mechanically, and technically how it actually works, like how putting watchstones in and taking them out and getting stones, how that will do. But I think my actual strategy that I use in it is not as efficient as other strategies now. So yeah.
But I think also that's the difference between maximizing the Atlas for efficiency or just trying to not get stuck. And I think a lot of people come in...
You won't get stuck with my one, I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. I think you won't get stuck with a lot of the guides and a lot of the methods. But some people will be confused, like, okay, what do I have to run next? Do I just keep running in this region? Will this spawn Conquerors? Okay, Conqueror doesn't spawn. Is that bad? Is that good? Then once you have the first series done, then suddenly Conqueror spawn is more random. Then people get completely confused because they're now super worried that they're doing it wrong now because okay, I've been spawning a Conqueror every map since like I default Cirrus, and now there are no Conquerors. Are they now gone because I defeated Cirrus? What is happening? I've got so many questions I've gotten about that.
Yeah.
And it's just not mentioned that suddenly Conquerors are random, and before it was guaranteed and deterministic. It's weird. I think there's a lot of stuff that they hopefully learn from it if we ever get like the next step of endgame, basically.
Oh yeah, it's very strange. Yeah. But I guess, well, we'll put on the end here. I guess Yoji, you can maybe chuck a couple of links in the video description just of, I don't know, stuff of what we've talked about, whatever you feel like doing, right? But
Atlas guide, stuff Brittle mentioned on the last episode, the racing resources that really helped me as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think that's we're gonna kind of wrap it up now as well here. We'll do a little bit of a question and stuff after. I'm gonna be playing a little bit of Gauntlet.
Actually, no, because I have to run.
Yoji has to go. Okay,
I'm a bit short on time.
I'll answer some questions anyway. So we'll be heading anyway. But thank you so much for being here, guys. If you have any questions whatsoever, you can catch me live, or you can catch Yoji live, or ask on the YouTube video or anything like that. Or just catch us around the place. See us in other people's streams when we're trolling other streamers with Pepe laughs and all that kind of stuff. So call us out when we're being toxic, and we'll see you guys pretty soon. No, thanks for coming. Hope this helps. Let us know if it did help. And as always, stay sane. Exiles.